So my name is Hannah Zunker. I am the chair of the Emerging Leaders Council, which is United Way's affinity group for young professionals in San Antonio between the ages of about 21 to 45. So we try to engage that audience and keep them looped into the amazing work that United Way is doing, as well as get them involved in it. I work for Valero Energy. I've been with Valero for about 7 years now, and I have the opportunity to work on our strategic planning team. And in my role as chair of Emerging Leaders Council, I also have the opportunity to serve on United Way's Board of Trustees and the Executive Committee. So I've been very fortunate to work with Chris Martin directly, and I've gotten to know him pretty well over this last year. So Chris, thank you so much for joining us today and letting me interview you.
Of course, thanks. Thanks, Hannah, for joining us for your second session. You've already led the Emerging Leaders webinar that we did last week, so thank you. And thanks to everybody else that's joined us today. Really appreciate your willingness to take time, and we want to hopefully share with you a little bit about what's happening and you know, the work that we're trying to accomplish in these very challenging and different times, that's for sure.
Yes, oh, absolutely. And for those of you who are not super familiar with Chris or haven't gotten to know Chris in this type of setting before, I want to give you a quick background on Chris's bio. So he actually joined United Way of San Antonio in October of 2018 as president, but officially took on the role of president and CEO in April of 2019. So this is kind of like his 1-year anniversary. So congratulations, Chris. And
thanks.
Previous to Chris coming into San Antonio, he's actually had a very vast background with serving United Way, about 30 years of experience across various roles and opportunities with United Way. And his most previous role was actually Senior Vice President and Chief Development Officer for United Way of Greater Cincinnati. And so that's where he came directly from, Cincinnati, but he's served in multiple leadership roles and in different capacities. And just a few of the places that Chris has been in his work with United Way have been now San Antonio, Cincinnati, Florida, Pennsylvania, Illinois. So we joked last seminar with our ELC members that Chris's tenure with United Way is longer than some of our ELC members have been alive. So you have
Thank God it's Friday.
Yeah. And then in addition to Chris's experience with the United Way and commitment to serving the communities that he lives and works in, Chris and his wife, Krista, actually have 4 children. So he's got a nice big family to take care of too.
Yep, thanks.
So Chris, thank you again for joining us. I'm excited to ask you all of the questions that I think many of our attendees are wondering when it comes to United Way, as well as how United Way is handling the impact of COVID-19 here in San Antonio.
Sure. So, you know, obviously as you think about what's happened over the last month plus, it's been a huge shift for not only United Way, but I think about what our agency partners are experiencing and the difference that they're trying to make in this community as they think about how they can impact people on a day-to-day basis, and just the way they've had to shift the way they interact with their clients. And you know, obviously we've had to shift to working from home, which has been very different. Learning to have our Zoom meetings and do those to the best of our ability. And still stay focused on serving this community. And I know we have a number of our agency partners that are on this meeting today, on the call today, and I want to thank them. Thank them for the incredible commitment that they have demonstrated to their clients. And we've tried to demonstrate that same level of partnership for them as we've tried to adjust our operations and do so with 2 things in mind. Or actually really 3 things. Number 1, first and foremost, is how do we continue to improve our community? Number 2, how do we continue to have an impact on individual lives in this community? And number 3, how do we do that as partners? And as partners I think through these challenges, I think our partnerships have strengthened every day, and they become stronger every day just because of the interaction that we have. So thank you to all of our partners, not only our corporate partners, but our agency partners as well.
Well, Chris, I want to ask you, you talked a little bit about impact in the community, and what has been the impact of COVID-19 on not only United Way, but also our nonprofit community here in San Antonio?
Sure. Obviously beyond just the shift in the way that we've had to operate, I think about some of the ways that if you think about the way our agencies interact with their clients and I'll just use one example, the agencies that provide home visits for families. Home visits don't take place right now, right? I mean, they don't take place in the same form that they used to, I should say. So they've had to really rethink the way they're serving their clients, rethink the way that they are helping families, to stabilize and to take that next step and just to maintain. So certainly that's been a huge shift, and oftentimes funding models are tied to that, right? I mean, it's oftentimes when you have government grants that are tied to how many home visits you make, that has had to really shift for them and the way that their revenue comes in. And then if you think about the number of just fundraising events and the negative impact on revenue for our agency partners, and certainly we're going to have to think about what that means for our United Way as we go forward, and we're going to have to think about what that means for our agency partners as they go forward. One of the things that I think we've been very fortunate to this point is we've now been surveying our agency partners. I think this is week 7, while some of them may be getting tired of answering the survey on every Friday afternoon. It's been helpful in our information, and it's been information that we've shared with our with other funders in this community, and there's real consistency across the board in terms of the way they've been impacted. Revenue has gone down, operational costs have gone up. Everybody has said that the way that they interact with their client base has changed, so they've had to shift there. So all of these things coming together have had a huge impact on our ability as a system to provide services to clients. But I will also tell you that I think it's one of our community imperatives should be how we strengthen the nonprofit community and that foundation that's going to be required as we think about the long-term health of this community. Once we move beyond the crisis response mode, ultimately we're going to have long-term needs from a recovery standpoint, and finding ways to strengthen that community that will provide for those long-term needs and the recovery aspect of things is going to be critical.
Absolutely. And, as you're talking about some of these challenges that United Way is dealing with and nonprofit members in our community, is there any particular challenge that stands out to you as being the greatest challenge that you guys have dealt with so far? Is it just transitioning from being able to work in person to having to deal with things virtually, or is it funding, or is it consistent across the board?
I would say there's a lot of consistency, but I think the biggest challenge, at least from our perspective, is the challenge of uncertainty, the challenge of not knowing. And so having to plan for all of the what if scenarios, and if you think about it from a United Way perspective, one of the things that we're thinking through right now is we've got to think about what the annual campaign looks like in the fall, where we generate the revenue to support the agency partners that we invest in to do great work in this community. But what does that look like for us? And so we're having to plan for, what if we had to do a virtual kickoff for every one of our companies? What would that look like for us? So many things with uncertainty. I would say that's probably the biggest challenge from a United Way perspective, and ultimately having to rethink the way our agency partners are supporting their clients. And one of the things that we've done as an organization was we very early on, we knew that because of these challenges, because of this uncertainty, we would have to provide flexibility for our partners, and we did that. We did that with our funding. I mean, if you think just 9 months ago, we were thinking about what did the metrics look like as we tried to achieve the goals in Ready Kids and successful students and strong individuals and families and safety net, and those metrics are very different today. And so by providing flexibility, number one, we've got to make sure that our partners stay strong and have the ability to deliver services in the end. And so we've had to flex our funding and allow them, to shift some of that to operations where they needed to. And it's the right thing for us to do, quite frankly, as partners. So uncertainty is probably, for me, at least, is what I would say at this stage.
Oh, I completely agree. And I think this level of uncertainty is probably the biggest challenge across many industries. And so I think you really hit the nail on the head on that one. There may be many of you who are not familiar with United Way's 211 helpline. But 211 is a free, anonymous social service phone line that helps people find resources in their community that they need most. And Chris, I understand that 211 has experienced an influx of phone calls over the last few weeks and possibly months. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and how 211 is helping people find the resources that they need?
Sure. So when much of this pandemic really started to hit and become reality for the state of Texas and San Antonio, for that matter, we have 211 is a statewide line where each one of the cities is able to back one another up, and you would never know that if you were talking to somebody in another community, other than the fact that they may identify what city they're in, but they still give you the same information if you're located in San Antonio and you're talking to somebody that's in Houston. And there was a time early on where we would have anywhere from 6,000 to 7,000 calls that were in queue, and amazingly enough, they still, the average wait time I think at that point in time was only about 6 minutes. So they were moving through and giving people information as fast as they could. And in fact, I think we had an all-team meeting, brief all-team meeting this morning, and they shared that just Monday through Thursday this week there were 9,000 calls. And so 211 is the access point for COVID information, and you probably, if you were driving at all on the roads and saw any of the text out signs, you would have seen, for COVID information, call 211. So the types of calls they've gotten have been all across the board, as you can imagine, as people are facing, probably many people are facing the most desperate time in their life. And as you think about the need for utility assistance, rental assistance, all that has gone up. And, even right down to the point where calls for where can I get testing for COVID to find out whether or not I'm infected with the COVID virus. So, in fact, just before we went work remote, I spent about 30 minutes on the phone with one of our 211 operators and with that call specialist. And one of the calls was from a mother who had a teenage daughter that worked in a fast food restaurant and was exhibiting every possible sign of COVID-19 and had no insurance and wanted to know where she would be able to go to get tested for free. And even though that person wasn't physically located in Bexar County, we were able to point them in the right direction. Our call specialists did a great job. They've done a wonderful job of answering every call with the care and compassion that every person that calls 211 deserves and pointing them in the right direction. So certainly challenge from a volume standpoint, but at the end of the day, they know what they're charged with. They do a great job of meeting the challenge and helping everybody that calls to the best of their ability.
The specialists that take these calls, they've been trained pretty extensively, correct? Absolutely,
and each one of the call centers needs to be certified in order to maintain a certain level of service, and they're required to go through that certification process every couple of years. So they all do a great job. They're committed, and and they give their very best. They give everything that they have. It's amazing to me. They give everything that they have to every caller that, that they actually speak with.
Well, I know I'm certainly thankful for them. I know that, just hearing 9,000 calls this week, that's a tremendous number of people who are looking for help. So thank you guys for what you're doing. If our listeners today are like me, they've probably seen in headlines and even through some of the United Way emails that have come through, some talk about the Community Response Fund that United Way and the San Antonio Area Foundation have partnered together to create. Chris, can you talk about this response fund and how did it get off the ground so quickly, and how are those funds being distributed?
Sure. So so that's a joint effort between United Way, the San Antonio Area Foundation, and a number of other funders that have stepped forward and made investments in that fund. And it was really designed to become a rapid response fund, and ultimately focused on how do we invest in the nonprofit community to make sure that they were able to deliver services to the best of their ability as we deal with this crisis response. And it got started so quickly, I would say, number one, because there was a common goal. And when you have a common goal of helping your community and helping the nonprofit community, and you're on the same page, it's real easy to get started and do so quickly. And it really was a phone conversation that I had over a weekend with Margie French from the president of the Area Foundation. And we got talking about what we needed to do collectively, and we knew that if we came together and put our best foot forward jointly, that we would be successful. And to this point, we had been. We've raised a little over $5 million. I think we're about $5.3, $5.4 million so far. And just to give you some sense of how we're trying to deliver on the rapid response aspect of the fund, raising about 5.3, like I said. We've already invested over $3.5 million in the community to more than 100 different organizations that are providing services that are COVID related. And those decisions are made by the funders. And there's a very abbreviated RFP process that the recipients are going through. They fill out a quick grant application, which doesn't, we wanted to make sure that this was not a burden on the nonprofits. They have enough to deal with. So we needed enough information to make a sound decision, but we also didn't want to overburden the nonprofit community with having to fill out a bunch of information. And literally they're at a point now where they're reviewing grants twice weekly, and making those awards as quick as they can to get the money into the community, into the hands of the nonprofits so that they can better serve their clients and this community.
Is this a large team that's working on this, or is it just a few people? It sounds like a tremendous amount of effort.
There's I would say roughly no more than 10 people that are involved in kind of that grant decision-making process. And then ultimately they do an initial screening of the applications and move those that are appropriate forward. And then there's a group, like I said, that a little bit less than 10 folks that review each one of those grants, have discussion around what we're able to invest in it and whether or not it really fits with the purpose of the response fund, and typically notify the agencies. I think they're doing their best to get back to the agencies within a 48-hour period of time once the application is received.
Very good. And one thing I'm noticing, and I'm sure others have noticed this, and this is truly United Way's strength, is I'm seeing nonprofits, I'm seeing the business community and individuals all really kind of increasing their collaboration and coming together in ways that maybe we haven't done before. Is that something that you're observing as well, Chris?
Sure, no doubt about it. And again, I go back to that comment I made earlier. When you have that common goal of just trying to help the people in this community, it's really easy to set aside what's important to me when you focus on what's important to us. And I think that's what you're experiencing right now. People want to help. organizations and companies and individuals want to help. And because of that desire to make a difference, it really has, it's helped this community put its best foot forward. And we're seeing that in the day-to-day interactions throughout the entire community. It just, it really has brought one of our strengths and the caring that this community has. It's really brought that to the forefront, which is really nice to see. And I think that will, at the end of the day, the question becomes, how do we carry that forward, right? And, you know, we've been able to do it through a crisis. Now, how do we carry that forward and do that every day to make a bigger difference in this community as we look to the future?
Chris, I think you stole my next question. That's exactly where I was going to go. I think this level of collaboration is certainly something that I'd like to see continue in the community. And I'm just curious, are there some lessons learned right now? And it may be too soon to tell, but are there some lessons learned that you really see carrying forward into the future?
Yeah, I would definitely say that because of all the collaboration that's taken place to this point, you know, one of the things that we can really bring forward with us is continued early dialogue as we start to think about how we address the problems in this community, and how do we bring everybody together around certain issues that we face as a community, and be creative. You know, this has forced us to become much more nimble. It's forced us to become creative and innovative. So those are definitely things that, from a learning standpoint, you know, as I think about our United Way and what I've experienced with others in this community, those are things that we can bring forward to our future that hopefully will help us better address some of the core issues that we face in the community.
You know, speaking of creativity and innovation, United Way did something that truly brought joy to my heart. That is your Thankathon. So United Way launched what they're calling a Thankathon, where they are able to virtually thank frontline service providers, people who are working in medical services, first responders, those working in the food supply chain. This is a really fun way to show your gratitude, and a really simple way for you to show your gratitude. You know, how did this idea come about, and how has that been received so far?
So there were, it's interesting. It started with a brief conversation that I was having with somebody that was in the healthcare industry over a weekend, and we were just talking about what would it look like if we did something really big in this community for the essential workers to say thank you once we got past the crisis and the crisis response aspect of this. And then I had a few conversations internally with a couple of our team members, and then it changed to, well, why would we wait until the end? They're doing so much right now. And so we shifted gears and said, let's create this and let's get this out there so that people have an opportunity to say thank you to those that are not only in the healthcare industry, but, you know, all the essential workers. If you think about those people, the first responders, the folks at HEB and the other stores that are still open, and making sure that our worlds are a little bit easier than they might have been if they weren't, and a little bit better off. So we moved to, rather than wait till the end, let's do it now. And let's start thanking people now. And it's gotten a lot of traction. We've had a number of people that have completed them. And I know that they're appreciated where they're being delivered and being shared. So that's been a real positive. And hopefully it's a little bit of a boost for them. It's amazing what those individuals are experiencing in this community. And the day-to-day is tough enough on us. I can't imagine what they are going through as people that have to show up every day, and the risk that's involved in that right now. So why not say thank you?
You know, a few kind words of gratitude can really go a long way. I definitely feel that way. And for those who haven't had the opportunity to participate in the Thankathon, you can go to United Way's website and you can actually select a custom card based on your preference and send it to someone that you want to say thank you to. So thanks you guys for putting that together. Yet another way that you have been addressing some of the biggest needs in the community in response to COVID-19 is childcare. So a lot of these frontline service providers have to go to work and they don't have somewhere for their children to be while they're working. And so you guys in partnership with Women United, of course, have addressed some of these struggles through some emergency childcare assistance. Can you talk about the work that's been done through that program?
Sure. So we knew early on as the work from home orders were kind of coming about, more and more companies started to work from home, but we also knew that we had essential workers where the last thing that they needed to worry about was the safety of their children as they had to go to work every day. And we wanted to make sure that, you know, they had peace of mind. They could go to work, focus on doing their job, and know that their children were well taken care of. And so it started with some initial funding from the city of San Antonio, funding from Women United, and funding from the area foundation. We all came together and said, how do we provide 3 weeks of childcare assistance to our essential workers so that at least we got them through that first 3 weeks, and it allowed them, number one, they had peace of mind, but it allowed them the time to think through what would happen long term for them from a childcare perspective. So you know, we've been very fortunate that we'll invest probably close to $400,000 in childcare assistance, which will probably help 400 kids with 3 weeks of paid childcare. And so it was really about how do we provide another way to provide support to essential workers as they started to deal with, you know, the challenges that they had to deal with just in order to get to work, because in some cases their child care centers were closed. In other cases it might have been they had family members that were taking care, and for whatever reason they weren't able to do it. Whatever their scenario was, we wanted to make sure that that was one less barrier for them as they went to work on a daily basis. And we've been very fortunate. We've had wonderful partners that have been a part of that. We had great partners that were providing incredible childcare before this, and they've stepped up to help us with this. You know, partners like the YMCA who continue to provide care for kids, and others. I don't want to leave anybody out, but you know, the bottom line is it was a need. We saw the need, and we had people that wanted to step up and meet the need. And it goes back to what I said earlier. You know, everybody wanted to find a way to help. And this is really, you know, this is one of the ways that we've been able to help those families that are impacted.
Well, that's fantastic. And a big thank you to Women United for supporting that effort and helping out in that initiative. Chris, you touched on this a little bit, and I know, you know, COVID-19 is going to create a lot of that uncertainty that you pointed out earlier, and it's hard to tell what's going to happen across multiple industries. But, you know, looking at United Way, how do you think United Way clearly has thought a lot about strategy and strategic planning in the last couple of years. You know, how do you see this potentially changing United Way's strategies, if at all? And how does that work with the impact councils that have been put in place?
Great question. And, you know, certainly one of the things that I've maintained since much of this started was the fact that the work that United Way set out to do a couple of years ago, as we really started to strategically look at the issues that we face as a community, and said, here's where we're going to invest our money, here's how we're going to measure success, here are the strategies that we're willing to invest in. I think they are probably more relevant today than they were just a month ago, because ultimately, as we move beyond crisis mode and we think about long-term health of this community, we will have to be successful in every one of those areas that have been outlined, and others for that matter. But we will have to be successful in every one of those areas in order to really get our community back to where it needs to be from, from a strength standpoint and a success standpoint. And we're going to think about what some of our kids are experiencing today, and what does that mean? How do we make sure that we provide support for those kids throughout their school years? Well, that support might look a little bit different now because of the way the issues that we're having to deal with as a community. What does childcare look like as we go forward? It's still critical, but what does that look like? And then how do we work on workforce development efforts and family financial stability efforts? And those are so critical for the success in the future of this community. We'll probably just have to look at them through a little bit of a different lens, but ultimately they're the right things to be investing in. It will help our community move forward. It will help our community strengthen and build upon past successes. So we're very fortunate to be positioned from that standpoint, but we're probably going to have to look at things through a little bit of a different lens.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right that the goals of the community and the needs in the community are going to shift due to COVID-19. And I also realize we have a lot of our nonprofit partners watching the webinar. And so I'd like to follow up with a question on, do you see changes in how United Way funds the nonprofit partners in the future as well?
That's a really good question. I think when we say changes in how we fund the nonprofits in the future, I think obviously a lot of that's going to have to be thought through. Ultimately, how we fund is going to have to be based on what we want to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And so, focusing on what we want to accomplish as we move forward will help us determine the best way to go about that. I think we made a significant shift in the way we funded over the last 12 months, maybe 12 to 15 months. I think we need to stay the course, but I think staying the course also means you have to be a little bit flexible when things like this come up, right? This has impacted our partners in ways that I don't think anybody might have imagined a year ago. I don't know that anybody would have imagined that we would be where we're at right now. And so being able to be nimble and being able to be flexible and still working towards achieving the goals that we've outlined to the best of our ability certainly will dictate what the future looks like for us. And that's all going to have to be a part of the picture. But ultimately, we can't lose sight of what we're trying to accomplish in this community as you think about how we focus on uniting this community in a way that really is about focusing on the most critical issues that we face and helping people and giving opportunities to people to better themselves and to better the community.
And a few of the things that you've pointed out is one, you have to be flexible in situations like this, and that flexibility is something that United Way is really embracing and will likely incorporate into your culture in the future, as well as this creativity and innovation, embracing that. And something that you're working on is a virtual volunteering platform. So how does virtual volunteering work?
Sure. No, great question. So we actually are going to be launching a virtual volunteering platform that we'll be launching it next week publicly. We've been working on it now for about a week and a half. Kind of a testament to the whole flexibility and innovation and nimbleness. If somebody had told me a month ago that I thought we could have a virtual volunteering platform up and running where our agency partners and other nonprofits in the community could list virtual opportunities and we would do it in a week, I would have probably laughed. I might not have shown up to work the next day. So we will launch it next week. We're still trying to finalize a few of the details. And it'll do a couple things. And it's a short-term platform. It is meant to be a response to the crisis. And it will allow our agency partners to do a few things. Number one, and other nonprofits for that matter, but number one, it will allow them to demonstrate and share the impact that this crisis has had on them. So financially, what has been the impact? How many volunteer hours have they lost? And number two, it'll allow them to tell their story, their story of how they're responding to this crisis and their story of how they've helped individuals and families. And then the third thing it will allow them to do is they'll be able to list out virtual volunteer opportunities. We still have people in this community that want to help. They may, for various reasons, the risks associated may not allow them to show up on site. So why not give them the opportunity to volunteer virtually? And why not list those out? And then it'll allow a person that wants to help to go in and sort things out and say, this is how I want to help. These are the areas I want to help. And the example I've used to this point is wellness checks on seniors are still needed, right? And you don't have to show up at the door to do that wellness check at all times. So it might be as simple as I can make phone calls on the weekend between these hours and please contact me. And somebody, and that agency will get notified that somebody has signed up and said they're interested, and they'll have their contact information. They can connect directly with that potential volunteer and then assign them from there. And so that will be standing up within the next week. And as we put the final touches on that, and we hope that our agency partners will utilize it. This is really meant to be a way to help them improve their operations and help them alleviate some of the pressure that they have, because they certainly can't operate in the way that they used to at this point in time.
Oh, absolutely. I'm thinking from, and it's, from Valero's perspective. I work for Valero, a company that has a big campaign. And I'm thinking ahead, we love to volunteer for United Way, and I think this virtual opportunity is fantastic. But I'm also thinking about the campaign. So I'm sure your gears are turning on the next campaign. Is there anything that you can share with us on your thoughts on how that might change and how employers like Valero and other companies in town might engage a little bit differently this year?
Sure. I think we're looking at all the possibilities. We're as I mentioned earlier, we're prepared. What if everybody said they wanted to do a virtual campaign kickoff? What does that look like for us? How do we prepare for that? How do we make sure that we're able to deliver on the expectations and of what our partners want? And but ultimately, I think people want to help in this community, and I think that when the time does come, and that's certainly, I will tell you this, that is certainly not our focus right now. It's critical. We've got to get through this, and we've got to be positioned and prepared when the time comes to be as successful as we possibly can be. Ultimately, this community cannot afford to go backward. We are in a much tougher position from a community standpoint than we were a year ago, and we had growth in our campaign, and which enabled us to bring more money to the table in this community. The challenge we're going to have right now is, as you think about the people that aren't at work, that what about those that don't come back for various reasons, and how will that impact us? The hope would be that as a community, as people have already shown they want to help, hopefully that will continue. That feeling and that spirit will continue as we go forward. But we will definitely be prepared for that. This community needs a bigger investment in its people, and we're going to have to find a way to bring that to the table so that we can strengthen the people that live here and strengthen the community for the good and for the long haul.
And one thing I'd like to ask, and many of you might notice that we're launching a volunteering poll, so please fill that out if you see it pop up. But one thing I'd like to ask on this idea of volunteering and helping is, what would you encourage us to do right now? Is there anything that you would say, as we're sitting in our homes thinking, what can I do to help? where would you point us to, and what would you suggest that we do?
First and foremost, I would say, well, once we have the virtual volunteer platform up next week, and it's actually not just for virtual volunteering. So if there are in-person opportunities that nonprofits want to share with others, they're able to do that. So there are plenty of opportunities out there. So if you're looking to get involved, certainly seek out an opportunity, because they do exist. That is an important part of what we need as a community as we go forward. And so while so much at the workplace has changed, and I certainly would never say stopped, because it has not stopped. It has sped up, in fact. But while so much of that has changed, the desire of people to make a difference has not. And so there are ways to get connected to nonprofits. There are ways to get connected to opportunities that are safe, that are meaningful, and they're impactful. We just have to pause for a moment of our day and find ways, find those opportunities, and go to the platforms that will help us connect. This is all about connecting, right? It's just about connecting in a very different way than we did before.
Mm-hmm. And this is what United Way is best at. It's uniting people for good, connecting people for good. And it's great to see United Way leading the charge and helping the community when it needs it most. So I'm hearing virtual volunteer opportunities in the next week. Jump on to the Thankathon and thank those frontline service providers. Are there any other big items that people could jump in on?
I mean, certainly if people want to find a way to support the COVID-19 response fund, it's available on our website as well. I know a number of people have already done that. Finding a way to make sure that the nonprofit community does not lose ground from a financial support standpoint is important. Mm-hmm. So we're going to need to think about what that looks like. Share the story of the work. Share the story of our work in this community, our collective work in this community, and encourage others to engage and get involved. I mean, we've got a number of things that are coming out that we'll be announcing. Not only will the virtual volunteer opportunity be announced next week, we've got another really innovative program that's going to launch probably within the next 10 days, I would say, at this stage, that we're working with a company out of North Texas that has an app that basically connects our currently furloughed and unemployed restaurant workers with an opportunity to earn some degree of income so they'll be paid to help with food distribution at some of the food pantries that have had to close because they don't have the manpower. They don't have the volunteer force that they once had. So some of them have had to close their doors. In fact, when I was talking with our folks at the food bank, I believe 25% of the food pantries out there are either closed or working reduced hours because the volunteer force has been reduced. And so now you've got these workers that don't have an income that once did. So, the financial well-being and just the financial health and stability of their family is at major risk at this point. And then you've got people that need food. And so we're going to connect by paying some degree of a wage to the people that are unemployed right now so that they can distribute food. And they're used to being in the service industry. So we at least give them an opportunity to earn some level of income where it won't affect their unemployment benefits as well. So again, all connected through technology, just another way that this United Way is trying to innovate and bring others to the table and partner with others like the food bank and like the food pantries and like the Area Foundation. This is all about collaboration and partnership and collectively coming together to change this community for good.
You truly are uniting everyone in the community. Chris, I'm before I start looking to see if we have any questions from our audience that we could ask before we run out of time, are there any other items that you'd like to share, or big lessons learned so far that you just want everyone to know about or know what your focus is on?
Yeah, I think we've shared most of it. I think the biggest thing, again, I go back to the biggest learning that we've had in this, and that certainly has been the collaborative piece of it, right? When you focus on a shared and common goal, you achieve many great things, and I think that's what we're seeing this community do right now. That's what we're seeing our agency partners come together around. That's what we're seeing other funders come together around. And just as an example, when we started surveying our agency partners about the potential impact that they might experience through this crisis, and then it really shifted to, okay, what is the impact that you're experiencing? That was just originally to our agency partners, and then that broadened out because of some of the other funders saying, hey, we should be thinking broader. And so we broadened it out to other agency nonprofits in this community based on other funders. And so we're learning in this together. We're all learning in this together. We're all trying to find a way to kind of make our contribution to the bigger picture. And I think that's what you're seeing happen right here in San Antonio and Bexar County. And it's a great thing to see happen. But there's no doubt we have huge challenges, and those challenges by no means will be easy to overcome. And because of that, I would just ask everybody to find their way to get involved, find their way to make a difference, because in the end, it will make us better off.
Thank you so much for uniting the community when it is in a moment that it needs it the most. So thank you again, everyone, for participating.